My phone lit up on my coffee table right when I had finally found a quiet moment for myself, and the message on the screen made my stomach tighten. Scale of 1 to 10, this date is -50. Send help. It was from Ellie Morgan, my boss. For a second, I just stared at it like it was a joke. Ellie was the youngest director at Horizon Solutions, a consulting firm in downtown Chicago. She was the kind of woman who could walk into a room full of executives twice her age and make them listen. In meetings, she was calm, sharp, and always in control. She never looked rattled. Not once. So if Ellie Morgan was texting me for help on a Friday night, it meant the situation had to be bad. Really bad. I'm Jack Reynolds. I'm 28, and I'm an assistant at Horizon. My life is usually simple. Early mornings, endless emails, booking meetings, fixing small problems before the big people even notice them. I live in a cramped apartment in Wrigleyville, and most nights I'm fine keeping to myself. A cheap takeout bag, a cold beer, a sitcom rerun, no drama. That night was supposed to be exactly that. I had kicked off my shoes, dimmed the lights, and I was scrolling through Netflix like I had all the time in the world. Then Ellie's text showed up, and the quiet in my apartment suddenly felt useless. I typed back a quick reply, added a thumbs-up emoji like this was a normal thing, and grabbed my jacket and keys before I could talk myself out of it. I told myself I was just being a decent person. I told myself I was only helping because she asked. But the truth was, I didn't even hesitate. The drive downtown took about 15 minutes, cutting through Friday traffic and bright city lights. Chicago was buzzing like it always did on a weekend night. Cars packed the streets, people moved in clusters, and the air had that mix of summer heat and restaurant smell floating through open doors. Ellie's date was at Bella, an upscale Italian place in the Loop. She had mentioned the guy earlier in the week. Martin, a sales executive from a partner firm, the kind of man who always wore a watch that cost more than my rent and talked like the world owed him attention. I parked a block away and walked fast, my heart beating harder than it should have. I didn't like admitting it, but it wasn't just worry, it was something else, a pull I tried not to name. When I reached the restaurant, I looked through the big glass windows before going inside. I spotted Ellie right away. She sat at a corner table under warm amber light. Her posture was perfect, like she was still in a board meeting. But her fingers drummed on her water glass and her smile looked tight, forced, like it was hurting her face. Martin leaned in too close, talking with big hand gestures like he was giving a speech. At one point, his hand brushed her wrist, and it didn't look gentle. It looked like he thought he had earned the right to touch her. Ellie's eyes flicked toward the window, and when she saw me, relief flashed across her face so fast she probably thought nobody noticed. I noticed. I walked in, the smell of garlic and fresh bread hitting me, and I moved straight to their table like I belonged there. I didn't even stop to think of a clever plan. I just let my mouth run with the first thing that sounded believable. "Ellie, sorry to interrupt," I said, putting urgency in my voice. "There's an emergency at the office. The Henderson report, system glitch, needs your approval right now before it goes to the board." Ellie stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. She didn't even blink. She didn't question me. She grabbed her purse like it was already in her hand for this exact moment. Martin's face twisted into a smug frown. "Really? At this hour? Horizon must be running a tight ship if they're calling in the cavalry on a Friday night." Ellie smoothed her dress. It was a simple black dress, clean and classy, and she wore it like armor. She gave Martin a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Work comes first, Martin," she said. "Thanks for dinner. Maybe we'll catch up at the next shareholder meeting." Then, she walked out with me before he could argue. The second the restaurant door shut behind us, the cool night air hit, and Ellie burst into laughter. Not a small laugh. A real one. Loud and free. She leaned against the brick wall like her legs had finally remembered they could relax. "Jack," she said between laughs, wiping at her eyes, "you are officially my hero of the year." If I had to listen to one more story about his yacht investments, I might have screamed. I smiled, trying to act casual, like I wasn't relieved to see her safe and smiling. "I'm just doing my job as the ultimate wingman." She tilted her head, still laughing, and her eyes caught the streetlight. "You deserve hazard pay for dealing with guys like that." I shrugged. "I'll accept payment in food." She pointed down the block. "Ice cream. There's a truck around the corner. My treat." We walked together, and the city felt different now, softer, like the noise was further away. The ice cream cart was still open, glowing under a string of small lights. Ellie ordered caramel cones for both of us, like she knew my order already. We found a bench near a fountain, the water spraying gently, and sat under the night sky with the city humming around us. Ellie took a bite and sighed like she could finally breathe. "He actually asked if I'd consider quitting my job after marriage," she said, shaking her head. "Like, who says that on a first date?" I laughed, but it came out sharp. "A man who thinks a woman's success is something to shrink." Ellie looked at me for a long second, like she was weighing my words. Then she nodded. "Exactly." We talked longer than I expected. She told me about her mom, about the pressure, about how every dinner invitation felt like an interview she never asked for. I told her about my quiet weekends and how I liked my simple life. She listened like it mattered, like I mattered. For the first time, she didn't feel like my boss. She felt like Ellie, just Ellie. A woman who was tired of being handled and judged and pushed. "You know, Jack," she said softly, staring at her melting cone. "It's nice having someone who gets it. No judgments. No expectations." My chest warmed in a way that had nothing to do with summer. I wanted to say something honest, something dangerous. But I played it safe. "Anytime," I said. "That's what friends are for." But when we stood to leave and her arm brushed mine, the line between friend and something else didn't feel clear anymore. It felt thin. Like one honest moment could tear it open. We walked back to our cars, and before we separated, Ellie looked at me like she wanted to say more. Then her phone buzzed, and she glanced at the screen with a tired smile. "My mom is already planning the next one," she said. I tried to joke. "Tell her I'll start charging a rescue fee." Ellie laughed, but her eyes stayed on mine a beat too long. "Careful," she said. "I might take you up on that." I drove home with the taste of caramel still on my tongue, but it wasn't the ice cream that stayed with me. It was her laugh against that brick wall. It was the way she had looked at me on the bench like I was the only calm thing in her busy world. And deep down, I knew one thing. That night wasn't the end of something. It was the start. After that night outside Bella, something between Ellie and me shifted in a quiet way. It was not loud or dramatic. It was more like a door that had always been closed, finally cracked open, and now there was light coming through. The next week, I was in the break room pouring coffee when Ellie walked in. She looked the same as always in the office, polished and focused, hair pulled back, phone in hand. But when she saw me, her eyes softened, and she smiled like we shared a secret. "Thanks again for the rescue op," she said. "My mom is already lining up the next victim. Some gym guy. I can feel it." I laughed and handed her a mug. "Just say the word. I have fake emergencies ready." That was the moment it became a thing. Ellie's mom kept setting her up with men who looked good on paper, and Ellie kept trying because she felt trapped by family pressure. But now she had an escape. Me. At first, I told myself it was harmless. I was helping my boss avoid miserable nights. I was just a friend. I was just the assistant who knew how to solve problems quickly. But every time Ellie texted me in the middle of one of those dates, I felt my heart jump like it wanted to run toward her before my brain could catch up. She started using simple code words. Code red meant the date was unbearable. Evac now meant she was counting seconds until freedom. The first repeat rescue happened about 10 days later. I was finishing a report at home when my phone buzzed again. Evac now. He is flexing his arms while ordering. Please help. I could almost see it. Ellie sitting there trying to stay polite while some guy treated the menu like a stage. I grabbed my keys and went. This time, the place was a trendy sushi spot in Lincoln Park. I walked in holding my phone like I was in the middle of a crisis. "Ellie," I said, loud enough for her date to hear. "I'm sorry, but the West Coast client just called. Data breach scare. We need you on the line right now." Ellie did not even blink. She stood up smoothly and smiled at her date like she was doing him a favor by leaving. "I have to take this," she said calmly. "Work emergency." Quote. Her date blinked like he could not understand a woman choosing work over him. He started to open his mouth, but Ellie was already walking out with me. The second we got outside, the neon sign behind us made her face glow. She slipped her arm through mine like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You are a lifesaver," she said. "Coffee. There is a diner nearby. My treat." We ended up in a retro diner with vinyl seats and flickering lights. It smelled like grease, coffee, and sugar. We slid into a booth, and Ellie sighed like the whole world had finally stopped pressing on her chest. We ordered black coffee and shared a slice of pie. Ellie talked with her guard down, voice low and honest. "They expect me to be tough," she said, stirring her coffee. "Then they whisper that I am too focused on my career to have a life, like I have to be a perfect machine at work and a perfect woman at home." I listened and nodded, because I knew that pressure was real. I had seen it in the way older executives talked to her, like ambition was something suspicious on a woman. "And my mom," Ellie continued, "she thinks marriage is the ultimate achievement. Like, if I do not have a ring by 35, I have failed." Something inside me tightened, not because I wanted to rush her into marriage, because I hated that she felt like her worth was on a timer. I tried to keep my voice steady. "You have not failed anything. You are building a life. The right person will add to it, not shrink it." Ellie looked at me like my words landed somewhere deep. Then it was my turn to talk. It happened without me planning it. I told her about college, how I had studied English literature, how I used to imagine opening a small bookstore with coffee and warm lights, a place where people could breathe. Then I told her about reality, student loans, rent, the need to be stable. "I guess I put it on hold," I said, trying to laugh it off. "Assisting pays the bills, and hey, I get to play hero sometimes." Ellie smiled, but her eyes were serious. "You would be great at it," she said, "that quiet passion. People would love a place like that." Quote. Hearing her say that felt different than hearing praise from anyone else. It felt personal, like she saw something in me that I had stopped believing in. After that night, the rescues kept happening. A few weeks later, it was a lawyer at a wine bar in River North. Ellie sent a facepalm emoji and a siren. I sent her a fake urgent memo about a contract deadline, and she walked out like she was escaping a burning building. We ended up wandering into a bookstore that stayed open late. The quiet inside felt like a separate world. Ellie ran her fingers along the spines of the books like she missed being that kind of person. "I used to read for hours," she said. "Now it is all spreadsheets and emails." We sat in the cafe section with a latte and argued about favorites. She loved Jane Austen for the wit. I argued for Hemingway because he said things straight, even when it hurt. She laughed and said, "You would like the honest ones." Another time, it was a rooftop lounge downtown. Some entrepreneur named Victor spent the whole date talking about investors and his app. Ellie texted me one line. "He is pitching me like I am a business deal. Abort mission." I called with a fake server outage, and she slipped away. We walked along the riverfront after, the city lights dancing on the water. "People see the title," she said, staring at the skyline. "They see the corner office. But at night it is just me and takeout. Mom thinks a husband fixes that." I swallowed hard. "I get it," I said. "If I ever open that bookstore, you will have a reserved spot by the window." Ellie bumped my shoulder, smiling. "Deal." And free coffee for life. Back at the office, our connection started bleeding into the workday. I would bring her favorite latte without asking. She would leave a sticky note on my desk with a book recommendation. Sometimes she would stand at my doorway a little too long, like she wanted to say something but did not know how. People noticed. Sarah from accounting teased us about being the dream team. Mike from sales joked that we were basically married to the job and each other. We laughed it off, but inside, I felt the truth pressing against my ribs. Ellie was not just my boss anymore. She was the person I wanted to tell everything to. The person I looked for in every room. The person whose laugh stayed in my head long after she walked away. Still, I kept my feelings locked down. I told myself she was out of my league. I told myself crossing that line could ruin everything. So I stayed in the safe space. Friend. Assistant. Rescue guy. But one evening after another successful bailout, Ellie and I sat on a bench in Millennium Park, watching the sky turn dark. The city lights flickered on around us, and the giant reflective sculpture caught the last color of sunset. Ellie leaned back and sighed. "What would I do without you, Jack?" I smiled, trying to keep it light. "Probably suffer through more bad sushi and worse company." She laughed, then her face turned serious. "No, really, you have been a friend." "More than that sometimes." Our eyes met, and the air felt charged, like the whole city had paused. For one heartbeat, I thought she might finally say the thing I was too afraid to say. Then she looked away first, and the moment broke. We stood and walked back to our cars, and I kept telling myself it was enough. But deep down, I knew I was falling. And I also knew that sooner or later, something was going to force the truth into the open. The peace Ellie and I had built in those quiet rescue nights did not last. It started changing a few weeks later, in the most normal way possible, like a new meeting added to a calendar that slowly takes over your whole week. One morning in the break room, Ellie stirred her coffee and tried to sound casual. "Mom's latest project," she said. "His name is Daniel. He's a pediatric surgeon, 35. Perfect on paper." I forced a smile that felt glued to my face. "Sounds promising." Ellie gave a small shrug. "Dinner this weekend. We will see." That phrase stuck with me. "We will see." At first I told myself I did not care. I told myself I had no right to care. Ellie was allowed to date whoever she wanted. She was allowed to find someone great and build a life that made her happy. But then the dinner turned into another date. Then another. Ellie still sent me little updates at first, like she was trying to keep me included. He tells stories from med school like it is a movie. He orders wine like he is giving a lecture. But the messages did not have our old code words. No code red. No evac now. No rescue mission. There was nothing to save her from. And that was the problem. The texts got less frequent. Then they got shorter. Then they stopped. I began hearing about Daniel in small ways, like background noise that got louder every day. Ellie casually mentioning they had gone for a walk in Grant Park. A coworker saying they saw Ellie at a gallery opening with a tall man in a nice coat. Ellie leaving the office earlier than usual with her hair down and a soft smile that did not belong to work. Each little detail felt like a slow pinch under my ribs. Then one afternoon, I saw them with my own eyes. I was downtown on Michigan Avenue picking up dry cleaning when I spotted Ellie and Daniel strolling along the Magnificent Mile. The sky was gray and there was a light drizzle that made the sidewalk shine. Daniel took his jacket off and draped it over Ellie's shoulders. He pulled her closer like it was natural. Ellie leaned into him and laughed, her face relaxed in a way I had not seen lately in our office halls. For a second, I just froze. The city sounds blurred. My hands went cold. I ducked into a doorway like a coward, pretending to check my phone. I watched them pass, and it felt like watching the end of something I never got the courage to begin. I told myself I was being ridiculous. I told myself I was just the assistant. The backup plan, the guy who helped her avoid bad dates, not the guy she would choose when she had a good one. But the pain did not care about logic. Back at work, the distance between us grew fast. Ellie stopped lingering after meetings. Our coffee runs turned into quick hallway nods. Her texts became short and professional. "Thanks for the report. Meeting at 10. Can you send the slides?" The warmth from our late-night talks felt like it had been locked away behind her office door. Then her mom started showing up at the office more often. Mrs. Morgan was the kind of woman who owned every room she walked into. Sharp eyes, perfect clothes, a voice that made people straighten their backs. One day, she came in for lunch with Ellie, and I was walking past the office with a stack of files when I heard her voice through the half-closed door. "Daniel is perfect for you," she said. "Stable, ambitious, someone who understands your world." I slowed down without meaning to. I should have kept walking. I should have minded my business, but my feet did not move. "Do not get distracted by lesser options," Mrs. Morgan continued. "You deserve a partner who elevates you, not someone who is just convenient." My throat went tight. My hands tightened around the files. Ellie's voice came next, quieter but edged. "Mom, it is not like that." Then Mrs. Morgan's tone turned sweet in the cruelest way. "Jack is your assistant. she said. Sweet boy, but let us be realistic. I felt my face burn like someone had slapped me. That was it. That was how she saw me. Convenient, a distraction, a sweet boy. I walked away before I could hear more, and I sat at my desk staring at my computer screen like it was the only thing holding me together. That night in my apartment, I lay on my couch and stared at the ceiling for a long time. I replayed everything. Ellie's laugh outside Bella. Her arm linked through mine under the neon light. The way she had looked at me on that bench like I was safe. Maybe it had all been real. Or maybe it had only been real to me. The weekend made it worse. On Friday, I noticed Ellie had blocked her evening out on the company calendar as personal. I waited for a text. Nothing came. On Saturday morning, I opened my phone and saw a photo on Ellie's social media. Ellie and Daniel at a cozy brunch spot, clinking mimosas. Weak vibes, the caption said. The comments were full of hearts and praise. You two look perfect together. Finally, someone worthy. I felt sick. I sat there in my kitchen holding my phone like it was something heavy, like it had weight in my hand and weight in my chest. By Monday morning, I had made a decision. I could not keep doing this. I could not stand beside her as her friend and assistant, while my feelings grew into something that hurt me every day. So I typed up my resignation letter. I wrote that I wanted to pursue opportunities closer to my old dreams. The literary world, a future in books and business. It was half true. The other half was simple. I needed distance before I broke. I sent the email quietly, CC'd HR, and the moment it left my inbox, my hands started shaking. Within minutes, my phone rang. Ellie. Come to my office, she said. Her voice was tight. When I walked in, she was standing by the window with her arms crossed. Her eyes were red around the edges, like she had not slept. My resignation letter was printed on her desk. Jack, she said, holding it up. What is this? You are quitting for what? A bookstore fantasy? Quote. I closed the door behind me, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it could crack my ribs. It is time, I said. I need to chase something for myself. Ellie stepped closer, her eyes searching my face. Is that really it? Or is there more? Tell me the truth. The truth hit my tongue like fire. I tried to swallow it back, but I could not. Fine, I said, my voice shaking. I cannot do this anymore. Being your sidekick, your rescue guy, watching you build something real with someone else. Ellie's breath caught, but I kept going because stopping would kill me. I have been in love with you for longer than I want to admit, I said, from that first night at Bella. Maybe even before. Watching you with Daniel, it is tearing me apart. The room went silent. Ellie stared at me like she was trying to understand how the ground had moved beneath her feet. Then her eyes filled with tears. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, barely audible, Jack, I broke up with Daniel last week. I blinked, like my brain could not hold the words. He was great on paper, Ellie continued, voice trembling, but he never made me feel alive, not like you do. She took a step closer, tears spilling now. The person I have been waiting for, she said softly, the one who listens, the one who shows up. Her hand lifted, hovering near mine like she was afraid to touch me. It's you, she said. It always has been. My whole world tilted, all the doubt I had been carrying cracked open. And even though relief surged through me, I knew one thing clearly. This was not a simple ending. This was the beginning of something that could change everything. For a second, I just stood there in Ellie's office like my body forgot how to move. Her words were still hanging in the air, heavy and bright at the same time. I broke up with Daniel last week. It's you. It always has been. All the fear I had been carrying for months cracked open, and what came rushing in was not just relief. It was love that had been waiting for permission to breathe. I took one step toward her, then another, and before I could overthink it, I pulled her into my arms. Ellie held on to me like she had been trying not to fall for a long time and finally let herself. Her shoulders shook, and a quiet sob slipped out. It was not dramatic. It was real. The kind of sound a person makes when they have been strong for too long. "I felt this way for so long," she whispered into my shoulder. "Since that first night at Bella, maybe even before." I closed my eyes and held her tighter. "Then why did you keep running dates like a job interview?" She pulled back just enough to look at me. Her eyes were glassy and honest. "Because I was scared," she said. "Scared of what my mom would say. Scared of what this would do to my career. Scared of what people would think if I admitted I wanted the man who worked down the hall." My throat tightened. "Ellie, I would never want you to lose everything because of me." She cupped my face, her hands warm and steady even while she trembled. "I'm not losing anything," she said. "I'm choosing something. I'm choosing you." Those words landed inside me like a promise. We stood there in her office with the city's skyline behind her window, and for the first time, the power difference between director and assistant did not matter. It was just two people who had been circling the truth and finally stepped into it. I wanted to kiss her right there. I wanted to forget the whole world and just feel her close. But reality was still in the room with us. My resignation letter was still on her desk. Ellie glanced at it like it hurt her to look at it. "Are you really leaving?" I swallowed. "I sent it because I thought I was losing you." "You're not," she said quickly. Then she paused, like she was forcing herself to think clearly. "But you can't stay in that role if we do this. People will talk. They will assume things. I don't want you to feel trapped here." I nodded because she was right, and because a part of me had wanted out even before my heart got tangled in her. "I still want the bookstore dream," I admitted. "I just didn't think I'd ever be brave enough to chase it." Ellie's expression softened. "Then chase it," she said, "and let me be brave with you." That weekend, she told me she needed to face her mom. Not later, not someday. Now, while she still had the courage, I did not go with her. Ellie said it had to be her fight. But I waited in my apartment like I was waiting for a verdict. When her call finally came late that night, her voice sounded steady, but tired. "It didn't go well," she said. I sat up straight on my couch. "What happened?" "She yelled," Ellie said. "She called it reckless. She said I was throwing away my future. She said you were a phase." My chest tightened. "Ellie, I'm sorry." "No," she said, sharper than I expected. "Do not apologize. I'm not sorry. I told her I'm an adult. I told her I'm done living for her approval." I could hear her take a breath. "She's not speaking to me right now," Ellie continued. "But Jack, I feel free. For the first time, I feel like I'm choosing my life instead of performing it." The pride in my chest almost hurt. "I'm proud of you," I said. "Whatever comes next, we handle it together." Quote. After that, everything moved fast and slow at the same time. At the office, we kept things professional, too professional. We did not touch in hallways. We did not linger alone in rooms. We spoke like coworkers, but our eyes kept telling the truth our mouths could not. At night, it was different. Ellie would come over and we would sit close on my couch, talking like we had no time to waste. Sometimes we laughed until our sides hurt. Sometimes we sat in silence with our hands linked, because being near each other was enough. I followed through with my resignation. HR processed it quickly. People acted surprised and supportive, like they always do when someone leaves. A few coworkers asked if I had another job lined up. I gave vague answers about pursuing a long-time dream. Ellie stayed calm in public, but on my last day, she asked me to come to her office after everyone left. She closed the door, walked around her desk, and handed me a wrapped gift. When I opened it, my throat went tight. A first-edition copy of my favorite Hemingway novel. "For your future bookstore," she said softly, "and a reminder that dreams are worth chasing." I looked at her, holding the book like it was fragile. "You did not have to do this." "I wanted to," she said. "I want you to build something you're proud of. I don't want you to stay small just because the world trained you to." That night, we kissed for the first time without fear. It was not rushed. It was not messy. It felt like something that had been waiting for months and finally had a place to land. After I left Horizon, my days changed. I enrolled in evening classes for small business management at a community college. I learned about inventory, marketing, and all the boring parts of building a dream that people never post about. It was scary starting over at 28. But it also felt like coming back to myself. Ellie made changes too. Watching her choose me also made her question the life she was living. She began negotiating a shift away from her director role. Not because she was weak, but because she was tired of being owned by a schedule that left no room to breathe. "I love what I do," she told me one night over dinner in Logan Square, "but I don't want it to be all I am." So she moved into independent consulting. Less prestige on paper, more freedom in real life. Our relationship started to grow without the office walls around it. Ellie met my parents in the suburbs. My mom fussed over her like she had been waiting for a woman like Ellie to walk through the door. My dad asked about my classes and gave me a proud nod when I told him I was trying. Ellie introduced me to her close friends. At first they watched me like they were checking for hidden motives. Then they saw how Ellie looked at me, and their faces softened. But her mother stayed distant. She did not text. She did not call. Ellie acted fine, but I saw the hurt when the topic came up. We had arguments too, not because we did not love each other, but because change has a way of shaking people. One night, Ellie snapped about my lack of a backup plan. "What if the bookstore thing fails?" she asked, voice tight. "What if you regret leaving everything because of me?" Quote. I set my fork down and met her eyes. "I did not do this because of you. I did it because I wanted more for myself. And yes, I want you too. But do not turn us into a mistake. We are not a mistake." Ellie's eyes filled and she reached for my hand. "I'm scared," she admitted. "This is real now." I squeezed her fingers. "Then we stay real. No more hiding. No more running." We talked until the sky started turning lighter outside my window. We promised each other honesty, even when it was hard. Weeks passed, then months. The chaos slowly turned into rhythm. Ellie's consulting work picked up. My classes started to make sense. I found a part-time job at a used bookstore in Wicker Park, learning the daily grind of shelves and customers and quiet conversations. One evening, after closing the shop, I walked along the lakefront with Ellie. The wind came off Lake Michigan sharp and cold, but she leaned into me like warmth was something we made, not something we waited for. She stopped and looked up at me. "I never thought I'd find this," she said. "Someone who makes me brave." Quote. I kissed her forehead. "We're not rescuing each other anymore," I said. "We're building something." Ellie smiled, and I felt the future pull closer, and for the first time I could actually see it. A place with books and coffee, a life that was ours, but I still did not know how hard the next step would be, or how much it would demand from both of us. 6 months after that day in Ellie's office, I stood in the middle of an empty storefront in Old Town, with dust on my shoes and a key in my hand that felt heavier than metal. It was the kind of space I used to imagine when I was younger, back when my dreams felt simple and allowed. Exposed brick. Big front windows. Enough room for shelves, a small coffee counter, and a few chairs where someone could sit and disappear into a book for hours. Ellie stood beside me, hands on her hips, looking around like she could already see the place alive. "This is really happening," she said softly. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Yeah," I said, "and I'm terrified." Ellie laughed, then reached for my hand. "Good," she said. "That means it matters." We had pooled what we could, my savings from years of being careful, her money from consulting. It was not endless. It was not safe. It was a leap that could either change our lives or break our hearts. But when Ellie looked at me like that, like this was ours, I stopped seeing risk as something to fear. I started seeing it as proof we were finally living. We named the place Page Turn. It felt right, like a fresh start, like the kind of story you open when you know you are about to be changed. The first weeks were chaos. I spent my days hauling boxes of books, building shelves, learning how to wire an espresso machine without electrocuting myself. I painted walls, cleaned old floors, and made mistakes that left me frustrated and sweaty. Ellie handled details I never would have thought of. She designed simple signs, picked out chairs, argued with suppliers until they gave us a better deal. She tested coffee blends like it was a serious science and smiled every time caramel won. We fought over silly things because stress does that. Should we alphabetize the mystery section or keep it by subgenre? Do we need more chairs near the window or do we keep it open? How much money can we spend on the coffee grinder? The arguments were short and sharp, but they always ended the same way. One of us would laugh first, the other would give in. Then we would kiss, covered in dust, and keep going. One afternoon, I caught Ellie standing still, staring at a stack of Jane Austen novels, like they were a doorway. She turned to me, eyes shining. "I spent so long thinking I needed the perfect life," she said. "And now I'm standing in a dusty shop with paint on my hands, and I've never felt happier." I crossed the room and wrapped my arms around her from behind. "That's because you're finally living your own life," I said. When we opened, the bell over the door sounded like a heartbeat. At first, business was slow. A few curious neighbors, a couple people who wandered in for coffee and left with one book. Some days we made barely enough to feel okay. Other days we sat behind the counter looking at the empty chairs and pretending we were not worried. But then, slowly, it started to grow. A woman came in every morning for a latte and a chapter of whatever novel she was reading. A college kid asked me to recommend a classic that did not feel boring. A young couple found our window seats and started making it their weekend ritual. The place began to smell like fresh pages and warm coffee, and the sound of quiet conversations filled the room. Ellie thrived in a way I had never seen in the office. She talked to customers like she liked people again. She smiled more. She laughed more. She looked lighter. And I felt proud. Not in a loud way, but in the deep way that makes you stand taller when nobody is watching. Still, there was one shadow that kept slipping into our happiness. Her mother. At first, Mrs. Morgan stayed silent. No calls, no texts, not even a cold congratulations. Ellie acted like she was fine, but I saw the hurt in small moments, like when she stared at her phone a little too long or when she got quiet after hearing her mom's name. I never pushed. I just stayed close. Then, one rainy Tuesday afternoon, the bell above the door rang, and the air changed instantly. I looked up from the counter, and my breath caught. Mrs. Morgan stood in the doorway with a black umbrella and a face that looked like it had been carved from discipline. Ellie froze mid-sentence with a customer. Her smile faded like the light had dimmed. Mrs. Morgan stepped inside, eyes sweeping over the shelves, the menu board, the reading nooks. Her expression did not give anything away. My heart pounded. I wanted to protect Ellie, but I also knew this moment had to belong to her. Mrs. Morgan walked to the counter and looked at me. "Mrs. Morgan," I said carefully, forcing calm into my voice. "Welcome." She nodded once, like she was deciding if I was worth acknowledgement. "Can I get you something?" I asked. She hesitated, then said, "Tea." Quote. I made it and handed it over like it was an offering. Mrs. Morgan took a seat at the small counter near the window. Ellie slowly walked over, wiping her hands on a towel like she needed something to do with them. "Mom," Ellie said quietly. Mrs. Morgan looked at her daughter for a long moment. Then her gaze flicked around again. The silence was sharp enough to cut. Finally, Mrs. Morgan spoke. "So this is what you chose?" Ellie's shoulders squared. "Yes." Mrs. Morgan's eyes narrowed. "And you're happy?" It sounded like a challenge. Ellie glanced at me for a second, then looked back at her mom. "I am," she said. "I'm happier than I've ever been." Mrs. Morgan took a slow sip of tea, still watching. I could tell she was measuring everything. The space, the customers, Ellie's face, the way Ellie's laughter slipped out when someone asked for a book recommendation. Ellie showed her around. Not like she was begging for approval, like she was presenting something she had built. "This is the reading corner," Ellie said. "That's where we do small events. We're planning a local author night next month." Mrs. Morgan did not smile, but her eyes softened just a fraction when she saw Ellie talking with ease, like this was where she belonged. Before Mrs. Morgan left, she paused near the door. Ellie stood beside her, waiting. Mrs. Morgan's voice dropped lower. "You look happy," she said. It was not full approval. It was not an apology. But it was a crack in the wall. Ellie's eyes filled, but she held steady. "I am," she said again. Mrs. Morgan glanced at me, then back to Ellie. "She'll come around," Ellie whispered later after the door closed. but I could hear the hope and the fear mixed together. That night after closing, we sat on the worn couch in the back room with our shoes off and our hands linked. "What if she never fully accepts it?" Ellie asked quietly. I squeezed her fingers. "Then we keep living anyway," I said, "because the life we built is real, not a performance." Ellie leaned into me, and I kissed her hair. Outside, the rain tapped at the windows, and the shop smelled like coffee and books, and something new. For the first time, I realized the dream was not just the bookstore. The dream was Ellie. The dream was choosing each other even when it was hard. And I knew the next step was coming, whether we were ready or not. After Mrs. Morgan's first visit, things did not magically become perfect, but they started moving, the way winter starts loosening its grip when spring is trying to arrive. She came back a week later, then again 2 weeks after that. Sometimes she bought tea and sat in silence by the window. Sometimes she brought a friend, the kind of woman who wore pearls and asked questions like she was inspecting the life Ellie had built. Ellie answered calmly every time, not defensive, not desperate, just steady. I watched it all from behind the counter, proud of Ellie in a way that made my chest feel full. One afternoon, Mrs. Morgan stayed after the last customer left. Ellie was wiping down tables, and I was stacking cups when her mother spoke, quiet and careful. "I did not raise you for a small life," she said. Ellie stopped wiping and looked at her. "Then be proud," she replied, "because this is not small, it's mine." Mrs. Morgan's lips pressed into a thin line, but her eyes did not look angry. They looked tired. She glanced at me, then back to Ellie. "Are you good to her?" she asked. The question hit me like a test and a plea at the same time. I stepped forward, voice steady. "Yes," I said, "every day." Mrs. Morgan nodded once. "Good," she said, like it was the closest thing to permission she knew how to give. After that, her visits became less icy. She started asking about business. She asked Ellie what our busiest days were. She asked what kind of events we planned. Once, she even smiled at a little kid who came in and asked Ellie for a book with a dragon on the cover. Ellie told me later, when we were closing up, "It still hurts that she fought me so hard, but at least now she's seeing me." I pulled Ellie into my arms and kissed her forehead. "She's learning," I said, "and you're still standing." Page turn grew faster than I expected. Customers started coming in just to sit by the window and breathe. People posted photos of the caramel latte special. A local blogger wrote about our cozy reading nook. We hosted our first small author night, and the chairs filled up so quickly we had to bring in extra stools from the back. On the outside, it looked like a dreamy success story. On the inside, it was still work. There were slow days that scared us. There were nights we stayed late doing inventory while the city slept. There were moments when I counted the register twice because I needed to be sure we were not sinking. Ellie and I argued sometimes, not because we were falling apart, but because we cared. Because this was ours. One night, I suggested expanding the coffee menu, and Ellie snapped that we could not afford another machine. I snapped back that we could not stay small forever. We stood in the back room, both tense, both exhausted. Then Ellie's face crumpled, and she said softly, "I'm scared, Jack. I don't want to lose what we fought so hard to build." My anger melted instantly. I stepped toward her and held her. "We won't lose it," I said. "We'll protect it, but we also can't live like we're afraid to breathe." Ellie nodded against my chest. "Promise me we'll keep choosing each other," she whispered. "I promise," I said, "even when it's messy." A few weeks later, on a bright spring morning, I asked Ellie to marry me. It was not in a fancy restaurant. It was not surrounded by strangers clapping. It was in our bookstore, early before opening, when the sunlight poured through the big front windows and turned the dust in the air into little gold specks. Ellie was standing behind the counter making the first caramel latte of the day. Her hair was messy, and she was wearing one of our page-turn aprons. She looked real. She looked like home. I walked up, hands shaking, and set a small box on the counter. Ellie blinked at it. "What's that?" I swallowed. "It's me, finally being brave," I said, "the way you taught me." Her smile faded into surprise as she opened the box and saw the ring. Not huge, not flashy, just simple and beautiful. I took a breath. "Ellie Morgan, you changed my life. You made me stop hiding. You made me believe my dreams were worth chasing." I don't want to build this place without you. I don't want to build my life without you. Will you marry me?" Ellie's eyes filled instantly. She covered her mouth, then laughed through tears. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Jack." "Of course, yes." I slipped the ring onto her finger, and she leaned over the counter to kiss me like she had been waiting for that moment forever. When we told our families, my parents cried and hugged us so tight. Ellie laughed. Her friends screamed so loudly in the shop that a customer thought something terrible had happened. Mrs. Morgan was quieter. Ellie met her mother for tea in the shop when it was closed. I stayed in the back room, giving them privacy, but I could still hear their voices, low and emotional. Then Ellie called me out. Mrs. Morgan was standing near the window. Ellie stood beside her, holding my hand. Her mother looked at Ellie's ring and exhaled like she was surrendering to the truth. "I wanted a perfect life for you," Mrs. Morgan said. "I thought I was protecting you." Quote. Ellie's voice was calm but firm. "I know, but I needed you to trust me." Mrs. Morgan's eyes shimmered. She looked at me again. "You're not what I imagined," she admitted. My stomach tightened, but then she continued. "But I can see what you are," she said. "You show up. You steadied her. You didn't dim her." Ellie squeezed my hand so hard it almost hurt. Mrs. Morgan cleared her throat, like emotion embarrassed her. "If you marry my daughter," she said to me, "you better keep being that man." "I will," I said. "I swear." Our wedding was small, not a performance. Not a show. We did it in the park, near the shop, under blooming trees, with about 50 people, the ones who actually knew us. My parents sat in the front row smiling like they had been waiting for this story to happen. Ellie's friends stood close, eyes bright. And Mrs. Morgan came. She walked Ellie down the aisle with a mix of pride and old stubbornness, but she did it. That was what mattered. Ellie looked radiant in a simple ivory dress, and when she reached me, her eyes locked on mine like the rest of the world did not exist. We wrote our own vows. I told her I promised to listen, to choose her even on hard days, to never take her courage for granted. Ellie promised to keep being honest, to let herself be loved, to build a life with me that was real, not perfect. Then she smiled and added one line that made everyone laugh and cry at the same time. "I promise to rescue you right back every day." The reception spilled into page turn. We strung fairy lights across the shelves. We served cake and coffee. People danced between the bookcases like our story had made its own space in the world. Later that night, after everyone left, Ellie and I sat on the floor behind the counter, shoes off, tired and happy. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Ellie leaned her head on my shoulder. "Remember that night at Bella?" she asked. I smiled. "Yeah," I said. "If I hadn't shown up, I would have regretted it forever." Ellie turned her face toward mine, eyes warm. "You saved me that night," she said. "But you didn't just pull me out of a bad date. You pulled me out of a life I didn't want." I kissed her slowly. "And you pulled me into a life I didn't think I deserved." We sat there surrounded by books and the smell of coffee, and I understood something simple. Our story was not a fairy tale. It was real. It was built from rescues and risks, from fear and honesty, from choosing each other when it would have been easier to stay safe. When we finally locked up and walked home through the quiet Chicago streets, her hand in mine, the city lights guiding us, I felt grateful in a way words could not fully hold. We dared to stay. And that made all the difference. If you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who loves romance. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more emotional love stories.